Hello, everyone. I am Michael Steelman, Director of Alumni Career Management and Professional Networks for William & Mary. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's William & Mary Conversation and Connection, Regionalism in Virginia. This event is part of a series of events sponsored by TowneBank, bringing William & Mary leaders throughout Virginia together to discuss business challenges, partnerships, and collaborations. It has been a pleasure working with TowneBank on this initiative, and we are delighted to have William & Mary alumna and TowneBank's president of the Virginia Peninsula and Williamsburg area, Alexis Swann, as our moderator today and throughout the previous events. Before I turn things over to Alexis and our esteemed panel, I just have a few technology items to cover. Today's session is being recorded, and we will notify all registrants once the recording is posted to wmalumni.com. Questions are welcome, and we will address as many questions that time will allow. If you roll over the bottom portion of the Zoom window, you should see a Q&A icon appear. Please use that feature to submit your questions, and we will monitor the Q&A and chat throughout the hour and share them at times that are appropriate. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our panel and moderator. I provided complete bios in my reminder emails to all registrants. So for the interest of time, I will quickly introduce our panelists. I'm sure their experiences and expertise will be incorporated into their remarks throughout the hour. First, we have Tom Frantz, Chairman Emeritus of Williams Mullen, Chair of the Go Virginia's District 5 Regional Council, and member of the Executive Committee of the RVA 757 Connects. Tom is a proud graduate 3 times over at William & Mary with his bachelor's, J.D. and M.LT from William & Mary. Next, we have Martha Heeter. Martha is the Executive Director of PlanRVA. Martha is a proud 2003 alumna of William & Mary, as well as a member of the Society of 1918. She also received her master's in public administration from George Mason University in 2007. Next is James Noel. James is the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of the Franklin Johnston Group, overseeing the company's legal and insurance divisions. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia and his JD from William & Mary's Law School in 2010. Next, we have Will Payne. Will is the managing partner of Coalfield Strategies, an economic development firm group deriving new business investment to Virginia's Southwest region with a particular focus on clean energy, technology, specialty agriculture, and advanced manufacturing. Will is a 2001 alumnus of William & Mary and member of the William & Mary Board of Visitors as current vice rector since 2014. Last but not least, our moderator and program partner, William & Mary M.B.A. alumna and current president of TowneBank for the Peninsula and Williamsburg, Virginia regions, Alexis Swann. Alexis, thank you again for your leadership and support of this series that brings together so many great leaders throughout our Virginia community to discuss these important issues. We look forward to today's conversation on regionalism. Take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today and to represent my awesome employer, TowneBank. TowneBank is a $16 billion company that's been around, just born and bred in this region, and we are so excited and proud to present this series of thought-provoking topics that have become more and more a topic of conversation at everyone's dinner table and at the office and in the lunchroom. And we thought it was really important to bring that space to the alumni here of our beloved College of William & Mary and share some other thoughts that we may have. Town has been able to sponsor 3 of these where we've talked about workforce, we've talked about healthcare, we've talked about transportation. So today, our topic is regionalism, which is something we all have heard or been involved in, or at least had seen it or read it in the news. So I thought it was important for us to have a stimulating conversation today. When I looked up regionalism as a definition, basically it says development of economic and political systems based on loyalty to distinct geographical regions. So I thought it says the benefits of regionalism: pool talent, resources, efforts to accomplish efficiency and effectiveness. So now that we kind of understand what they mean by the term in the dictionary of regionalism or the internet, however you want to call it, I thought we'd bring in some experts that could have some good conversation about this topic in general. So I think we'll start with Mr. Frantz, since he said he is fresh off a conversation on regionalism. Can you tell us, Mr. Frantz, your thoughts about this topic, and what are some of the most important ingredients to a good region?
Well, thank you, Alexis. It's great to be here. I'm actually on William and Mary's grounds today at the business school, having just completed Go Virginia Region 5 meeting. That's a meeting of about 28 business and university leaders from the region. We were invited to have our quarterly meeting at William Mary today. Catherine Rowe is one of our members, and we heard a lot from Catherine today, which is always instructive and great. But quite simply, regions are the organizing body or force, if you will, in today's economy. And the stronger your region, the better it's going to do in the economy. And the stronger the sum of all regions, the better the state of Commonwealth is going to do, and the better the country is going to do. There are 4 key ingredients to strengthen a region. The first is connectivity, and that's connectivity by road, rail, plane, water, internet, energy, you name it. The better you're connected to the globe and to each other, the better you're going to do. The next piece is collaboration, and the better we're talking to each other and working with each other and working with others from related industries and related geographies, the better we're going to do. And that is Go Virginia's job. There are 9 regions in the Commonwealth. We're a state body, just like the university is. And our job is to encourage and fund collaborative activities. So we have set the growth and diversification plan for Region 5, which is essentially Williamsburg to the oceanfront in Virginia. And we fund projects between William and Mary and the city of Williamsburg or York County or Newport News, or you name it, 2 or more jurisdictions or universities or state agencies within the Commonwealth that want to increase and improve high-paying jobs in the region and quality of life. High-paying jobs, in essence, create other jobs. The third piece is innovation. The better you do the first 2, the more innovation you're going to have in the region. And if you do all those 3 things well, your productivity is going to increase, your gross regional product is going to be able to increase, and you're going to be able to fund improvements and enhancements to the quality of life and other things within the region. So that's what I think it is, and that's the 4 ingredients. And it was particularly appropriate for our group to meet in the business school because this business is the heart of what we're doing.
I couldn't agree more. I think Will can expound on that as well. Will, would you like to share your thoughts about the same question?
Sure. And thanks, Alexis, for hosting this, and Michael, and for William Mary for hosting this. It's really exciting. So Tom and I served on the board of visitors for some time, and he earned rightfully so reputation as the godfather of Hampton Roads. But now you can add this idea of this so-called mega region. The RVA 757 connects is an incredible vision that is it's a game changer for William and Mary, being right there in the middle, as Tom always talked about in our meetings. I'm going to add a couple points to Tom's ingredients, coming from a different region. So Tom's Region 5. I'm in Region 1 in Southwest Virginia, 16 localities in the western corner of Virginia. It always comes up during statewide campaigns. You ask candidates if they visit Southwest Virginia, and they say, yeah, I went to Roanoke. Well, you need to drive another 2.5, 3 hours before you really get to the end of Virginia. And the challenges are great: out-migration, loss of population, and there's a brain drain issue. That's why regionalism matters. Even more in areas that are struggling, Southside Virginia, Southwest Virginia. And so I would add 2 more ingredients. One is first an acceptance of reality. And this is more maybe our issue than other areas, an understanding of of our strengths and kind of managing weaknesses. So the classic SWOT analysis stuff. And the second is openness to the new, which includes accepting when long-term, or long-held practices aren't working anymore. Maybe they never worked. And there must be change and openness to change. And that includes welcoming newcomers, people like me. I moved from Richmond 3 years ago to Southwest Virginia, and it's been, personally, professionally, incredible, decision. But to reinforce one of Tom's points, collaboration matters. And I'm going to speak in terms today of economic development and in the world that Tom is in as well. And moving beyond the rubber stamping of stated objectives, it's about working together to achieve them in real honest ways, assigning credit when credit is due. And that's difficult because you think about setting up an ecosystem or job creation in regions. Everybody wants that win, and we have to recognize that a job in one county in Virginia Beach is good for the folks in Portsmouth. And as you think about a region, you've got to acknowledge that wins, collectively are really important.
All good points. Thank you, Will, for sharing the view from the Southwest region. We also have Martha and James. Would either one of you have anything else to add on the ingredients of building a successful or good region? Martha?
I'll just share, and thank you so much, Alexa, for doing this today and hosting these series. It's just really exciting to be able to have these kinds of conversations across the full network and think about the impacts of what's happening in Virginia. I don't know that I have an add to the ingredients, but I do think that sort of the case is really important to think about. And just hearing these gentlemen talk, two words really come to mind: freedom and opportunity. This idea that a region as a collection of neighborhoods and communities has so much to offer to people to be able to live and work and fulfill their dreams. And that, I think, is a really beautiful thing when we think about how communities kind of connect together and how people can migrate through the course of their life. And that's one thing that I think has drawn me to this field of really being able to create in physical space, but also, kind of the mental space to be able to evolve. And that's what regionalism does. It makes that space for kind of everyone to come together and collect and ideally live their best opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Martha, for contributing. Anything additional, James?
I think Tom and Will and Martha covered it mostly. Having or being the son of a head of economic development and the son-in-law of the head of Go Virginia, I feel like regionalism is part of my blood now. But for me, not to speak to the ingredients, but growing up in York County, which is a little more of a rural area, and hearing Will talk about Southwest Virginia, the fact that we are all here today talking about regionalism is a huge step forward. For me, it's a mindset, and it takes collaboration and education of all parties to really, truly appreciate the benefits that we'll talk about today of regionalism to be able to move that ball forward. I can still recall talking to Tom, not too long ago, maybe while I was in law school, and he was starting to get this momentum going, and a lot of people didn't believe him, didn't think it would happen. And look where we are today. Speaking to the meeting that he had today, and the momentum that reInvent and Go Virginia has is absolutely incredible. So I do think at some point talking about the mindset and continuing to educate those about the importance and benefits of regionalism is one of the key ingredients to helping us think strategically and continue to move the ball forward, both regionally and as a country. So excited to be here today, and thank you for letting me join.
It's one of those topics that's hard to put in different categories, but when I did some reading about it, when people are having conversation about regionalism, they think about local government support, they think about transportation, they think about workforce, they think about natural resources and the aging population. But one of the things that came up a lot was economic development, and you just shared a little bit about that, James. that economic development is in your blood, but what does that have to do with regionalism in your mind, and how does it contribute?
Does anybody else want to take that, Will or Tom? I'm happy to tee it off and just say that.
Tee it off, and I'll go to Tom next.
Okay. Yeah, so regionalism spurs economic growth, thinking about how we can act regionally to better, to create more jobs, to create a better quality of life. All of those things, when you think regionally and think about Hampton Roads, for example, if we can think as a region, we can bring bigger businesses here, which obviously increases the taxpayer base, which increases the job base, and brings more attention to the needs of this region as well. Infrastructure, I'll talk a little bit about affordable housing later, but if you can think from that mindset regionally and work together to collaborate, you can really see the benefits of quality of life and job growth in particular.
Great start, Tom. What do you think? What would you add to his conversation?
Well, I think when I think of economic development, the two byproducts that you want of regionalism are growth, GRP growth, growth regional product growth, and quality of life improvements. And economic development is required for both of them. Intentionality is the key. And that is, you have to get the various leaders of the various subgroups together within a region to intentionally work on a plan to, for example, improve the number of businesses moving into an area, to improve the growth of businesses within an area, to improve the number of high-paying jobs coming to an area or growing from an area, all of which fuels the economy. The best example of intentionality I can give you is in the country right now, there are 11 mega regions that are intentionally a couple of regions working together to make things happen, be that transportation, be that economic development, be that subparts of connectivity, the internet, etc. And we have a group, we have the RVA 757 Connects group, which is made up of about 80 leaders right now. And we are intentionally trying to improve several things. The two best examples are we're working hard to get the funding for the 29-mile gap in I-64, which connects us by roadway. And we have, believe it or not, we have the city of Virginia Beach and the Henrico County, which have somewhat of a reputation of being silos in some areas, leading an effort to help us turn this region into the 11th global internet hub in the world. So there's 10 right now, Marseille being the last one. We're working with Marseille. We've had a couple of sessions with them to build on their plan. And the plan is to put together an effort between Virginia Beach, which is having more and more cable landings internationally of the 5G speed, to the integration center, but the fourth largest in the country in Henrico County. And to have those two endpoints to the globe be filled with data centers and users within. So we have William and Mary and the greater Williamsburg area working hard on one of these. We have ODU and the South Side working hard on one of these. We have VCU and Greater Richmond working on one of these. We look like we're going to get the supercomputer at Jefferson Lab. We have a number of circles of internet that have bubbled up around this corridor. And we have, I think it's as many as 60 leadership groups for the first time working together as one to make us a global internet hub. And Williamsburg by itself, Richmond by itself, Virginia Beach by itself, Newport News by itself. None of them could do it by themselves. But together, and with these tremendous endpoints we have, the cable landings and the integration center, we can make us the 11th global internet hub in the world. And if we do that, the speed of business is going to accelerate within this region, and more businesses will want to locate and grow here, giving TowneBank a lot of business.
Yeah, when we are excited about that opportunity, for sure, for sure. Martha, what would you add to Tom's comments? I think they were awesome. We got a lot of questions coming in the chat, but before I do that, I wanted to give our panelists a chance. Anything you would add there?
No, I think that was really, really wonderful. Yeah, I wouldn't have anything to add to that.
The one thing that I heard coming up, Tom, from you is the economic development then spurs opportunity for growth, and then that all improves the quality of life, right?
Yes.
What are some of the other things that you think we should think about? I've heard the conversation of affordable housing, some community development issues. What other things should we be considering as ways that we can continue to support this concept?
Well, particularly in this world of virtual working and remote working, you really have to have the environment that people want to live here. And that is all parts of what makes us want to live here. And, we all have our different ideas about what's important. The younger crowd with James and everybody has a slightly different spin there, but obviously education, obviously parks and recreation, transportation, the way we treat each other with respect and professionalism, all those things we have a chance to improve them as the funding grows if we intentionally use it the right way.
Agreed. I was in a conversation this week with some chamber members. We were talking about the need for affordable housing in our area, and it seems to be something that is a bit of a gap in our region. And so I know James has some thoughts on that. Would you like to share why you think affordable housing can assist with regional growth?
Yeah, I think it's a byproduct. So Tom mentioned a lot of things that we could work on intentionally regionally. And I know some of the questions have come in about environmentalism as well. But you think of safety, you think of education, you think of a good place to live, quality of life. And of course, you need housing. And in places like Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, especially in Hampton Roads, you have a lack of land availability now. And as everyone can relate to what we have going on currently in our economy, we have a high cost of living, and the area median income in our world is critical, the AMI. So in Hampton Roads, it's not as high as it might be in Richmond. So you have a gap, and you have a disparity between your affluent and your impoverished. And so bringing in affordable housing, which is what we do to develop these communities, allows you to fill that gap, allows you to incentivize big businesses. You think of your Amazons retaining in Norfolk Southern, which we lost, here to another city, another region, is absolutely critical. And if we can think regionally about that with different planning directors and city managers, I think Michelle DeWitt's on the line, and Williamsburg, if we can think like that and have that mindset to pool funds together from the state and private sector, when it comes to something like affordable housing, you're going to create a better place to live, and you're going to attract those businesses that need their employees. They can't be commuting an hour away to work. We have a lack of affordable housing here at the oceanfront, which impacts tourism, which impacts economic growth. So for us, we like to say, hey, yes, Virginia Beach has the beach, but if we can think, as Will mentioned earlier on, it does impact Portsmouth. It does impact Norfolk. It impacts our entire region. So that's one of the ways we really need to think about housing from a regional standpoint, and understand and appreciate that ultimately with affordable housing in places like Hampton Roads, Southwest Virginia, Richmond, and Northern Virginia, you're going to be able to regionally attract bigger businesses and a better quality of life. And then also from a cultural standpoint, it really helps integrate different demographics together regionally, which leads back to quality of life and economic diversity.
Agreed. Will, what are your thoughts on that concept?
Yeah, sure. Housing is obviously extremely important in an area where we are. We're challenged for our moderate income housing stock. Needs a lot of work, and it is one of the, I wouldn't say it's the top 3 or 4 issues, but it's for business prospects, but it is a question. Beyond talent, it's about being able to attract new people to the region, and a lack of moderate income housing, starter housing in some cases, holds back Southwest Virginia. And some of the we're trying to understand today what drives that challenge. Some zoning issues, the need to have private developers step up and build on spec, essentially a little bit easier in more metropolitan urban areas, not very easy to do in more rural areas. You are taking significant chance there. And so I think we need loan guarantees. I think we need to incentivize some of these developers to, reinvigorate some of our, downtown properties where we can have, mixed use development. But it's been a challenge, and we have an announcement of, right now we've had a number of job announcements that we've worked on and that others have worked on, including in the city of Bristol with the new casino. Housing is important if we want to attract people. And to Tom's point earlier, remote work, this new American hybrid workplace. We've been working on that in Southwest Virginia. And in that case, that's about people who, 2 things: people who already live here, and we're working on telework opportunities, but for remote work, and to be able to attract people, we need to have housing. And I can tell you, there's in the city of Bristol today, maybe 2 houses that are up for sale that could be snatched up quickly. We don't have the stock. So this is why it's a regional problem. It's a local issue, but it's a regional problem that we all need to solve together.
Yeah, agreed.
Alexis, it's interesting. I remember when the topic of housing affordability, or the product affordable housing, wasn't really a concern for economic development. It was kind of, it would work itself out, kind of. And I think that this upset that these gentlemen are talking about the reality that every region, every community, every employer is chasing talent, it's really kind of changed the way we think about in our communities the importance of the preservation and the development of housing that's affordable across the whole spectrum of our workforce. And so, where people choose to live, or where they are by market forces, caused to live, really impacts so many other things in our community. And I think it's really kind of that underpinning of, if we can, as regions, get it right on the appropriate mix of housing opportunity to the people that we have in our community today and who we hope to attract in the future, so many of these other objectives almost kind of follow. We have better diversity and stronger equity in our school systems. We have more, I think it was mentioned, more diversity in communities and more kind of connectivity, which stimulates ideas. Tom's comments about that connectivity, collaboration, innovation, and productivity, all of those things happen when people and their neighbors are able to interact. But if you can't afford to do those things because of the limitations in the housing market, so many of those other kind of puzzle pieces crumble away.
I think you brought up some good points, and connectivity and working together and collaboration. All those are vital to the success of regionalism. But since you kind of started this topic, private-public section, how do they work together to promote regionalism? How important is that collaboration in your mind?
Well, certainly in the context of affordable housing, it's both and. There's policy opportunities with land use. Certainly there are miles to go in the way we think about what's permitted under development and where that development should be permitted. But then I think some of the creative financing ideas that were brought to light, I mean, it's really kind of a partnership between the public sector, the private for-profit sector. There's lots of opportunity and space for the for-profit development community, but also the nonprofit sector. Some segments of our population, some income levels really do need more than just that kind of nudge into the market. They need some support services. And I think particularly here in the Richmond region, our nonprofit community development sector really kind of steps up, I think, and rises to be able to bring those support services. But it's all three of those coming together, right? Like policy and legislation, land use, but also the creative tools to make the deals work.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, I love that you're called the godfather of regionalism, just in case you didn't know, that's your new title. I just wanted to hear your thoughts, because it all seems like this is common sense. Why is it not happening? What's the struggle here?
Well, historically, the problem has been if you look at the compensation plans of people that work for cities and counties and economic developers within cities and counties, their compensation plans are usually tied to how well the county's doing. So it's easy for them to translate, well, if I do X, I'll make more money. And that creates a silo bias. And so then it's up to others to help teach everybody the benefit of making your numbers and improving the stock of your city or county by working with others. And that's hard to grasp. Historically, that's been hard to grasp. I think with some of the things that have happened and some of the opportunities we've had, we invested almost $1 billion in densifying the port and improving port operations and therefore flow through the port. We've got these cable landings in Virginia Beach, and when one company pays $1 billion to put a cable under the Atlantic to Virginia Beach, they have a business plan, and the business plan includes doing something with what happens with the landing, and Virginia Beach then realizes, well, wait a minute, they're not going to build everything in Virginia Beach. They're going to build something here, something there, et cetera. And you want the on ramps and off ramps in your jurisdiction, but nobody is going to realize what they want to realize on their own. And so what we've seen change through the years. When I first got to Virginia Beach 50 years ago, they had the water wars. Lake Gaston had happened, and we had stopped using Norfolk water and used Lake Gaston water.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, Sidney Kellum incorporated Princess Anne County into the city of Virginia Beach, forever landlocking Norfolk. And so until we had a bunch of first-class funerals, you couldn't think as one. But this younger generation, all of you all, I'm the gray head here, all of you all are much more receptive and much more open to working with others and thinking more broadly. And that's what's happened. But the compensation system in the old days and some of the biases in the old days held us back for a long time.
I think that's good history lesson there. So I appreciate that. Hey, Will, what about your thoughts on private-public sectors? I was curious if it's different in your region versus maybe in the eastern part.
No, in fact, I mean, it's being open to new ideas and new strategies in economic development is pretty much the only way we're going to change Southwest Virginia, change Southside Virginia, identify a new vision for those regions, a path to sustainability. And we've got something in practice now involving the private sector. I think a real first test of a regional ecosystem is there a set of private companies that are part of the strategy setting and leadership of regional economic planning, not just government. There's a point where government plays a critical role, whether it's the local, regional, state level. But there's a point where government cannot be as effective as the private sector, especially in economic development in an area like where we are. We've partnered with, we have Dominion Energy and Appalachian Power, I mean, the state's two largest electric utilities, among other private partners, to say, along with legislators, with a campaign called Invest Southwest Virginia, an effort to say, we understand the challenges. We're not satisfied with the quality of leads, the depth of relationships, the kind of the state of economic development. So we got to change that. And that's not easy for a lot of people to understand sometimes, or even appreciate. But in the end, it's resulted in new jobs, new investment, and so an openness to involving the private sector. We don't have a regional chamber of commerce, and so the idea in what Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, Richmond, having regional chamber of commerce, having along with the Go Virginia region and others, having business leaders like people like Tom who are guiding the region, so important. And I think we can learn lessons in rural areas to see the success that's happened in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads.
All right, I think they're all good points. I did get a question from one of our attendees that says, has there been any thought to free internet access for all the regions to help with access for pockets of those who don't have? So, I mean, I'm curious, is that different in different regions? Is that keeping your region, from being as connected as it could be, or is it statewide, or is it region-wide? I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that question. Will, I'll start with you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Martha. You want to speak up? That's fair.
I just wanted to give a commendation to the Commonwealth. I mean, I think the state Department of Housing and Community Development and the Virginia's approach to helping to bridge the connection divide has really been premier across the country. So we certainly haven't solved all of the problems across Virginia, but I think that the way that the Commonwealth has promoted public-private partnerships to be able to invest in the necessary infrastructure, whether that be upgrading to 5G or it's installing fiber, it's been really important. I think the question about affordability is where it's the next frontier, and so we will soon, I think, be able to have the backbone in place across the Commonwealth where the infrastructure is there, but it's going to be a matter of whether every household can afford the bandwidth that they need to be able to function and work and study and access healthcare. And so that, I think, is really I love seeing that question, because that's kind of the next phase. And I think regions are well positioned to start talking about that. But it gets right back to that earlier question. It's going to be a problem that a solution is found across sectors and across communities.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that?
Because I can add to that, and thank you, Martha, for bringing up that point. A lot of thanks go to the Department of Housing and Community Development. The federal funds are flowing, body grants. Senator Warner and legislative leaders, came down to announce a large amount of money, and I think I forget if it was to get us to universal connectivity here at, several years ahead of schedule. Southwest Virginia, contrary to some beliefs, has a strong backbone for broadband, but the challenges that we face are last mile, where it just doesn't make sense to extend cable when it's one home, two homes along 5 miles of road. And so during COVID, a number of grants were made possible from DHCD for towns, not just in Southwest Virginia, but in other areas for free for hotspots in downtowns. You had students during COVID did not have internet connection at home, were either not going to school or were driving to near a library or near a school to use the internet or use the hotspot from there. Very challenging times. That's no different than families that are in downtown Richmond or in other areas of Hampton Roads. It's not just a rural issue. It's around the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? I'm going to move on. Tom, this question came in for you. You had mentioned mega regions, the concept of a mega region, and the question states, do any of the national mega regions cross state lines, or are they identified as only within the boundaries of a state? I guess looking for examples of other mega regions.
Sure. The best example is Cascadia, which actually crosses the Canadian-US border. It's an intentional effort focused on building high-speed rail between southwestern Canada, Oregon, and Washington, and then various economic development related topics in that. But there are multiple jurisdictions in that one. The mountain range is all within the United States, but it crosses several western borders in the Rockies. Obviously, Denver is one of the bases there. The I-28 corridor in our Northeast picks up a number of the New England states, starting with Boston and moving out. Let's see. That's the three big ones I can think of. I'm sure there's some more, but they're the big three. There's 11 total.
Are there things that we could learn from them, since they've seemed to, some states have figured out regionalism as a concept?
Oh, absolutely. And we study them all the time. We've had a study done on each of them. But just so you know, this mega region initiative started about 14 years ago, and our own Jim Ukrop of William Murray fame, it was his idea. He and I were sitting in the back of a business school board meeting. He drew a map on a piece of yellow paper of Richmond to the oceanfront and said, "Shouldn't this be one region?" I said, "Good idea, Jim." And he said, "Yeah, go work on it." So that's what started. It started in the William Murray Business School.
That's awesome. I think we all can appreciate you guys' vision, and I think we've all had similar thoughts that there's benefit for us working together. So what other thoughts do you guys have about the concept of building this regional, big mega region here?
Well, Alexis, I'll piggyback on Tom's comment with Jim Ukrop, and he often says this. Tom does. We just need to continue to have leaders that are willing to think bolder and bigger, and to frankly buck the norm a little bit or trend until it ultimately becomes the trend. One of the questions was about one of the more exciting projects that impacts a big region. I mean, you think about the HRBT, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, you think about transportation from to the peninsula and then to Richmond, and how critical that will be for the flow of traffic from a safety standpoint, and ultimately different businesses. They want to see that when they come to our area. Another leader that I worked for before my time here was John Reinhardt, who was the head of the Port of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I worked closely with Tom on this concept, but that thinking bigger and bolder and understanding and educating all of our local and state leaders, and I think a lot of the federal US ones got it, about the importance of investing in the port, that it does help not only just Hampton Roads, but Richmond. It helps Southwest Virginia and Northern Virginia. So people like that, Aubrey Lane is another one that comes to mind, someone who's thinking regionally. So you have these leaders now that it's becoming more of the norm. I mean, we did, I won't talk too much about light rail. We don't want to derail the conversation here, but that was a miss. We had a big opportunity there to connect and capitalize on that circle that Jim Ukrop drew for Tom. But I just wanted to come full circle on the fact that it really has to be a mindset. We need to have these kind of conversations and to educate individuals. On a micro scale, what we see in affordable housing a lot of the time is kind of you're not in my backyard movement. Hey, why do we need this? We don't want this. But when we ultimately get to educate and they see the end product, and we get leaders involved and they understand why it is so helpful for that area and for that city and for that region, eventually folks are excited about it and they appreciate it. So for me, just having leaders that are thinking big, thinking bold, and continuing to educate and spread the word about the importance of regionalism is so important here in Virginia.
I think those are all great points. I can remember a time when I was on the Civic Leadership Class Institute. I hope I'm saying it right. And we visited the port, and I think it was eye-opening to all of us, because I live on the peninsula, what the port really meant to all of us, and then led to some really good discussions where we brought John to our region and shared everyone, why is the port important to us all. So I echo what you're saying there, James, that we need to continue to have more and more dialogue.
It's a perfect study of public-private partnership, regionalism, and investment and getting. I mean, when John started, he had a big initiative and plan to really educate local officials and state officials, and I think he executed on it. It took some time, but once he did, we had a lot more private infrastructure and public infrastructure go into the port, and now it's benefiting your steels. You can think of a lot of different businesses that have moved out to Suffolk because of the port, and so it's a good example of one regional effort that has impacted a much larger area just than that footprint of those terminals.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I want to challenge all of my panelists with my last question that I added without you all knowing, is why are you passionate about regionalism, and what can we do as the participants on this call? What can they do to help with that effort? Who wants to start?
Well, I can tell you my passion really evolved when I was the CEO and president of Williams Mullen, and our biggest two offices were Richmond and Hampton Roads. And I realized that from every business school course I took that there's two ways that you grow your revenues. You either grow your market or you grow your share of the market, and hopefully both. And I said, well, the easiest way to grow Richmond and Hampton Roads is together. And that started my passion. So I guess it was driven by the attempt to help Williams Mullen.
And what are you challenging us to do, Tom, that are listening to this call?
I think to think more about your market, the region you live in, however you define it, and work with others, both public and private others, collaboratively to make it better and improve it every day. And the big four things: connectivity, collaboration, innovation, and productivity. We all ought to know those and keep those in the back of our mind.
Great. Who wants to go next? Martha?
Sure, yeah. I'll just say, I grew up in a house with a local elected official. So I think from an early age, I had a window in what it's like to be a volunteer public service in Virginia, a servant in Virginia. And then certainly my time at William & Mary crystallized for me what it means to be a member of a community. And so professionally, it feels really natural that I'm now in this line of work, working every day to look at data, pull together partners, try to come up with solutions to problems that we face today and that we think we're going to face tomorrow, and put those plans into action. I think that truly, I believe that cooperation regionally and across sectors is the way to do that. I think that, just as Tom said, there's a way to get the sum greater than the the individual parts, and that's by working together. So regionalism is that path for me. I think my ask of those that are participating is get involved. Join a local board or commission, or get involved in the conversation if you're in the Richmond and Hampton Roads area, and participate in 757. Follow what's happening on the internet. There are so many opportunities to get behind this positive momentum. Southwest Virginia, the same thing. There's so much happening in all parts of Virginia, and it's just a matter of getting connected, whether it's the environment or affordable housing, talent, economic development, the entrepreneurship ecosystem. There are these hubs of energy and activity happening in every corner of Virginia. And we need more people who are enthusiastic and willing to put their, talents to work to be able to make the future that we all want. And I just would ask that, sign up, be positive, be optimistic, and stand behind the people like Tom who have been fighting for this for so long.
All good points. Thank you, Martha.
I'll let Will close. If I want to keep my wife happy, I don't really have a choice. I have to support regionalism, being Tom's son-in-law. But for me, Will touched on it early on. What got me behind it was the brain drain. And I'm from this area, from the 757, from Hampton Roads. And after UVA, after William & Mary, a lot of my friends all left the region and went to DC, New York, LA, Atlanta, Charlotte, you name it. And so I started to think about things that might have kept them there and kept future generations here. And so being able to have regional cooperation, again, promotes that economic development, more jobs right out of college. And so for me, that was the catalyst that got me really, really behind regionalism. And frankly, all that I kind of think about here and getting involved is behind that initial shock of the true impact of the brain drain locally in the 757. And for me, it's about getting involved, like Martha said, but just really keeping an open mind when thinking about these issues, and in particular regionalism.
Yeah, great. Well, what's your answer to that question?
Sure. Happy to add a little bit here. I've lived in Richmond and in Hampton Roads. Can we call it Hampton Roads now, or do we have to call it 757? But I've lived in Hampton Roads. I lived in Northern Virginia, and now in Southwest Virginia. I've seen, what each area has to offer. Learned a lesson early on, kind of when I was working in politics. The whole Commonwealth cannot be successful unless all areas are engaged. It may not be in equal ways, but all regions must be engaged, and that's a challenge for some regions. What's exciting is I think Chris Lloyd is on this call too. McGuire Woods, incredible site expert here, understands the pulse of or has a pulse on what companies are looking at when they're considering, larger companies look at when they're considering moving to Virginia. And beyond even just individual regions working together, the goal of different regions around the Commonwealth working together. And we've got a great example with Hampton Roads and Southwest Virginia, and Dominion's building a 2.6 gigawatt offshore wind farm, 176 turbines, has said from the beginning, and the Hampton Roads Alliance have been great partners with us, saying from the beginning, this needs to be a statewide supply chain. And so for regions not only to work together and have to wrangle localities, but to think even bigger, that we need to think statewide on some of these matters like of offshore wind supply chain. And we have, I'll put our manufacturers up against Hampton Roads any day, given the kind of equipment, size and scale equipment they've been building for the mining industry for years. It's really exciting to see the collaboration. And then the collaboration, as I mentioned, Chris, with Northern Virginia, with data centers, and not competing obviously with Northern Virginia, but it's complementing smaller facilities that can meet ESG goals with on-site renewable generation or nearby renewable generation. So this is my day job, and that's why I'm passionate about it. And I've kind of really found some incredible opportunities here. And my ask is, regionalism by and large is driven by governments, and so people need to hold their local, statewide leaders hold their feet to the fire There's a lot of talk about regionalism from others, especially elected officials. Sometimes you got to hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable on it.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard some common themes with all of you, and I've written down words because I love words. And what I hear are cooperation, connectivity, collaboration, innovation, productivity, all for the benefit of freedom and opportunity. So I love all of the things that you all have brought to our conversation today. And I thank you for your time and your expertise and your experience. I have one question that I wanted to end on, is because this participant said, can you tell me the difference between parts of the country where regionalism has worked and what we're experiencing here with the struggles of implementing regionalism? So do we want to let Tom answer that question?
Well, I mean, it comes down to intentionality, and where there are we have the Dillon rule in Virginia. We have cities or counties. We don't have cities within counties. We have one-term governors. I think all of those things lend themselves to regionalism being harder to do in Virginia than it is in other jurisdictions. But I'm proud of the sense that business leadership around the Commonwealth has focused on this and is leading the way in intentionality. And it's becoming more and more helpful to a candidate for getting elected to pay attention to regionalism. So I think we're getting better every day. And when I look at this screen and I see that you all are much younger than me and very engaged in this, I'm optimistic that 10 years from now, we won't say that.
Well, that is an awesome ending. So I appreciate all the work you've done, sir, regarding this concept and the vision of having a better, greater, stronger Commonwealth. So we appreciate all you've done. Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think we're right at the 1 o'clock hour.
What an hour, Alexis. Another great session. Thanks to TowneBank and your partnership for these 4 great sessions on bringing our leaders across our community. If Tom's the godfather of this regionalism, you all are the dream team. This has been a really terrific, informative hour for me, and I'm sure for many in attendance. Amazing that we have this great alumni base that we can look to each other as experts and bring you all together. Hopefully not the first time for many future conversations that you can all have and network amongst yourselves as well. And, if you have an interesting topic, we hope to do these again in the fall. So please do email me. We'll take a little break over the next few months of the summer, but certainly encourage you to stay engaged. We do have programming for alumni virtually in other ways. So certainly network and connect with us with those programs. I put a little survey in the chat. So please take a moment before you get to your next meeting to just give us some feedback, ideas, suggestions. We really appreciate that. And, certainly you all, thank you so much for what you do for William & Mary. I mean, obviously, Tom and Will, your leadership in the Board of Visitors over the years has been instrumental in the direction of the institution. Martha, your involvement with Society in 1918 has kept the alumni base connected and more amazing things happening there. Alexis, your involvement with the business school and all the partnerships that you're doing with TowneBank. And James, everything you're doing in the Virginia Beach region and helping keep our network of alumni there strong has been really appreciated. And so I thank you all for what you do for William & Mary, for what you do for the state of Virginia and the Commonwealth, and bringing together the regionalism across all of the areas that you all represent, and really appreciate it. I look forward to reconvening soon to continue this conversation and see the great work that you all are doing respectfully. So thanks again. Have a great rest of the day, and we hope to see you all again soon. Go Tribe.
Thank you.
Go Tribe.
Go Tribe.